The sun dipped low over Lagos, bathing the streets in a golden glow as life pulsed through the heart of the city. Just off the bustling roundabout near the Obalende market, a long line curved around a small, smoky food cart with red umbrellas. The smell hit first, savory, spicy, smoky, pulling people in like a spell. Everyone knew the name, Dave Hot Dog. Teenagers snapped selfies with their snacks. TikTokers and food bloggers gushed into their phones, mouths full of dripping meat and spicy sauce. Tastes like magic, they whispered, dazed, licking their fingers. And truly, it did. People claimed it healed hangovers, chased away sadness, and once a man even said it helped him land a job the next day. No one could quite explain it, but once you had a bite, you came back. Everyone did. Behind the glowing cart, inside a tiny back room walled with metal shelves and old coolers, Dave stood shirtless, murmuring prayers in a hoarse, guttural voice. A carved shrine, blackened with soot and melted wax, glowed faintly in the dark. Candles flickered beside a bowl of blood and bones. He reached into a bucket of raw meat, pale, fibrous, wet, and lifted a handful towards the altar. For strength, for many mouths, for the crowd, he chanted. Beneath the floorboards, something moved. A muffled whimper, then quickly, silence. Not far away, in a quiet flat across the Broad Mainland Bridge, Amaka was wiping her hands on a damp towel as the rich scent of jollof rice filled her modest kitchen. Her daughter, Chisom, had a habit of running through the door by 2:20 p.m. sharp, always grinning, school bag swinging. Better not be late today, she muttered with a playful smile, setting 2 plates on the table. She glanced at the clock. 1:57. Plenty of time. She didn't know that across the city, a fresh batch of Dave hot dogs was sizzling over a coal fire, and that something inside one of them twitched. 2:20 p.m. came and went. Amaka glanced at the wall clock in her small living room, then at the doorway. She stirred the jollof rice again, lowering the heat, a slight crease forming between her brows. Chisom was never late, not once in 2 years of walking home from school on her own. By 2:30, Amaka had already checked the corridor twice, peering down the stairs of their compound, hoping to hear the rhythmic tapping of her daughter's sandals on the steps. Nothing. She opened the front door and stepped outside, scanning the sunlit street. Mothers were chatting with buckets in hand, children were chasing after kites, and still, no sign of Chisom. At 2:45, the unease clawed its way up her chest. She picked up her phone with trembling fingers and dialed the school's number. Good afternoon, this is Amaka, Chisom's mother. Please, has she left school? Yes, ma, the teacher replied casually. She left a little earlier today, around 2, said she wasn't feeling too well. Took her bag. Amaka's breath caught. She left at 2? She should have been home 20 minutes ago. Our house is a 10-minute walk. Silence on the line. Then a hesitant, maybe she stopped by a friend's house. Amaka didn't even respond. She was already grabbing her head tie, yanking open drawers, calling out her daughter's name like maybe Chisom had come in quietly and hidden away. But the silence in the apartment was brutal. Too clean. Too empty. She burst out into the street, rushing from one neighbor to another. Did you see Chisom? My daughter, white blouse, pink backpack. Have you seen her? Most shook their heads with sympathy. One woman said she saw her walk past the junction around 2:05, but didn't see where she turned. She called her sister, her voice cracking, then ran back home to grab a photo of Chisom and sprinted to the nearest police station. The air inside was stuffy, the officer behind the desk chewing gum lazily. Ma, it hasn't even been 2 hours, he said with a shrug. Children her age run off to play all the time. Check with friends, come back if she's not home by night. Amata's jaw tightened. She doesn't do that. She comes straight home, always. But her words fell on indifference. She left with her fists clenched and her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Across the city, somewhere hidden behind locked doors and hollowed concrete, Chisom sat tied to a chair. Her wrists were bruised from the ropes. A thick gag muffled her sobs. Around her, wax from red candles dripped onto the concrete. A symbol, a circle made of bone fragments glowed faintly beneath her feet. And in the shadows, Someone watched, breathing heavily. The next morning, Amaka was out before dawn. Her eyes were swollen, her voice hoarse from crying through the night. She had printed dozens of flyers at a corner shop, some black and white, some smeared with ink, but all carried the same desperate plea. Missing child, Chisom Eze, 10 years old, last seen wearing white blouse and pink backpack. Please help. She handed them to anyone who would take them, at bus stops, under hot sun at open markets, on car windshields, church entrances, school gates. Some people took them with sympathy. Others barely looked up. Some glanced at her, whispered as she walked past. Still, she pressed on. Every mother she saw was a reminder. That could have been you. That could still be you. Near the foot of Obalende Bridge, she came across a hunched old man covered in dust and rags, seated by an abandoned kiosk. As she handed him a flyer, he didn't take it. He only looked at her with wide yellowed eyes and said in a cracked whisper, "The one who sells meat has eaten her." Amaka blinked. What? But the man had already turned away, humming something tuneless and rocking back and forth. She stormed off, disgusted and rattled, shoving the remaining flyers into her bag. It wasn't until later that same afternoon, sitting exhausted under a mango tree, that she overheard two women talking near a pepper stall. "Did you hear? That woman last year, her nephew just vanished, no trace. The one who bought food from that Dave hot dog man." Exactly, the same day, said the child complained of feeling dizzy and then, poof. Amaka sat upright. "Sorry, please, what did you say about Dave hot dog?" The women looked startled, then cautious. One leaned closer. "It's not proven, no, but rumors, people go missing, and somehow it always happens around that area, especially kids." Her heart hammered. A chilling thread began to form. School bags disappearing, children not making it home, vague excuses from the police, all around the same zone. All while Dave Hot Dog's business boomed. Suddenly, the madman's words didn't sound so crazy anymore. Long before the name Dave Hot Dog became a legend in the streets of Lagos, he was just a boy with no name, no family, and no future. He'd been found curled up under a bridge near Mushin at age 10, his eyes hollow, his stomach growling loud enough to drown out traffic. That was the day he met Baba Komo, the man that didn't just feed him, but offered him a god. The cult was called Onunumba, the Hidden Hunger, a secret society that believed consumption was power and that the purest sacrifice wasn't blood spilled on stone, but flesh swallowed by the masses. To them, a soul wasn't fully offered until it passed the lips of another. They took Dave in, fed him, clothed him, and gave him a new name. Not David, not Daniel, just Dave. Easy to remember, easy to trust. He was taught to cook, but more importantly, to consecrate. The cult showed him how to grind human flesh, mix it with spices, wrap it in innocent dough, and make people crave it without ever knowing why. At 15, he served his first hot dog from a rusty cart outside a bus stop in Yaba. No branding, no banner, just smoke, sauce, and charm. The first batch had come from a boy, homeless, nameless, forgotten. The next week, a woman came back asking for 3 more. She brought her co-workers. Dave smiled. His offering had been accepted. Over the years, his business exploded. He rebranded, modernized, and added flair. Dave Hot Dog became a name people whispered between bites. Celebrities posted selfies with his food. A senator once said his hot dog helped him taste youth again. But for the cult, fame wasn't the goal. Power was. Each hot dog eaten, unknowingly made from human meat, became a contract, a spiritual transaction. Every victim gave their spirit to the god of consumption, and every consumer unknowingly fed that god's hunger. Dave didn't choose his victims randomly. He watched, studied. The quiet ones, the ones that walked home alone, the ones whose parents were too busy or too trusting. Chisom was perfect, 10 years old, always smiling, always early, no brothers. Her mother worked long hours and lived close to a busy market. Easy to snatch, easy to vanish. When they took her, they smeared her wrists and neck with afondu, the ash powder laced with herbs and burnt into her skin as she cried. Now, deep in the shadows of the warehouse shrine, Her small frame slumped under the dim glow of flickering candles. Her eyes fluttered, glassy, half-conscious. Her breathing was shallow. She couldn't scream anymore. The god had chosen, and Dave was ready to serve.
Amaka had waited in silence for almost 2 hours, crouched behind a kiosk near Dave's hot dog stand, hidden in the shade of stacked crates and torn umbrellas. Her heart pounded with every customer that came and left, her breathing shallow, knuckles white from clutching her phone. She wasn't just a grieving mother anymore. She was haunting. Then she saw him. A man in a stained apron emerged from behind the stall. He didn't speak. He didn't even glance at the customers. He simply hauled a large blue cooler out from the back, its lid sealed tight and marked in red, "Premium Meat." Amaka's eyes narrowed. Something about the way he held it, so carefully, so reverently, made her stomach twist. She waited until he turned the corner and then followed, staying low behind vendors' umbrellas and parked wheelbarrows. He walked fast, weaving through alleys until they reached the edge of the market district. There, nestled behind rusting containers and forgotten trucks, stood a crumbling warehouse. A faded sign above the dented door read, "Supply Depot, no entry." She waited for the man to enter, then crept toward the building's side, her shoes crunching over broken glass. The brick wall had a jagged hole, just wide enough to peer through. She leaned in slowly. What she saw stopped her breath. The room was no ordinary butchery. Blood lined the concrete floor in dark, sticky pools. Hooks dangled from the ceiling, some still swinging. A steel table in the center was soaked red. Coolers lined the wall, but one had its lid slightly open. Inside, a human leg, small, hairless. In the far corner, a bin of children's shoes sat beside a pile of torn uniforms. Amaka's hands shook as she raised her phone. She clicked again, a severed arm, a row of teeth in a jar. Then through a curtain of smoke, she saw Dave, his white apron splattered, his lips moving in prayer as he circled a grill. On the fire, hot dogs sizzled. Then she saw it, a severed hand, tossed casually into a meat grinder like waste. She gasped, too loud. Inside, someone turned. She ducked back, heart slamming against her ribs. Boots stomped toward the wall. A voice barked in Igbo, then another, angrier, closer. Amaka turned and ran. Her legs burned, lungs screaming. Behind her, someone shouted. A door slammed open. But she didn't stop. She had the truth now. The horror was real, and they knew she had seen it. Amaka burst into the police station soaked in sweat, her phone clutched like a weapon. Her hands trembled and she slammed it on the desk, pulling up the photos and videos she had risked her life to capture. Look at this. That man, Dave, he's killing people. He's feeding us human flesh. The officer leaned back in his creaky chair, eyebrows raised in lazy amusement. He took the phone, squinted at the screen for a moment, then chuckled. "Madam, this looks like something from Nollywood. Who do you think you are, Inspector Binta?" Another officer joined in, laughing. "Maybe she's filming her own horror movie. Where's the script?" Her chest tightened. "This is not a joke. That's my daughter he took. Look at those shoes. Those are children's shoes. That's a hand in a meat grinder." But they waved her off. "Even if it's real, do you know how many hot dog stands are in this city? You think one video is proof? Come back with actual evidence, or better yet, a witness." She left in tears, fury boiling inside her. That night, she posted the video online. She added her voice, her story, her daughter's name. She begged people to look closely, to believe her. But the internet was cruel. Another cloud chaser. Who even edits like this in 2025? LOL, she's mad. Dave Hot Dog is a legend. Must be a jealous competitor. And worst of all, Dave's store got busier.
Influencers mocked the video, claiming it was free promo. "If that is human meat, give me more," one man shouted in a viral clip. Lines wrapped around the block. People said the meat tasted richer that week, more flavorful, addictive. And miles away, in the damp, suffocating dark, Chisom blinked slowly. Her little body trembled, her lips dry, her voice barely a whisper. "Mommy," she murmured to no one. A flicker of flame danced in the air as Curtis circled the stone floor, red robes brushing the ground. Midnight was near. The sacrifice was almost ready. No one believed her. But Amaka didn't need belief. She needed backup. Through a desperate referral from a retired teacher, she found Tunde Ojo, a rogue journalist infamous for exposing cult rings and corruption cells the mainstream media wouldn't touch. His name was whispered in markets like a warning, and his face rarely appeared online. When he opened the door to his hideout flat, the first thing he said was, "I saw your video. I believe you." That was all she needed to hear. Within hours, they made a plan. No more begging police, no more pleading with trolls. This time, they'd catch Dave in the act and stream it to the world before anyone could silence them. Tunde pulled out 2 button cams and strapped them to their shots. "We go in and record everything, and if anything happens to us, my server uploads the footage automatically." Amaka nodded, her eyes cold with fury. She bought a bottle of kerosene, a clock to use as a wick, and a long carved knife she tucked beneath her wrapper. She wasn't coming to ask questions anymore. She was coming to tear down the gates of hell. That night, under the cover of clouds and shadows, they slipped through the warehouse's back entrance. Tunde jammed the lock. Inside, the building was silent, but the stench of death was thick in the air. They passed through the butchery room Amaka had seen before. This time she didn't flinch. She led Tunde to a trapdoor she had glimpsed earlier behind a stack of flour bags. Together, they pried it open. The ladder descended into blackness. They climbed down into what felt like another world. A low hum filled the air. Candles flickered along the walls, of stone corridors. On the floor, graves. Some freshly dug, others just open. Names carved into wood, next to them ID cards, ripped school books, and glass jars filled with teeth. Then came the sounds, soft, broken cries. At the far end, metal bars sealed off a chamber. Behind them, children, dirty, bruised, trembling. And in the center of it all, a massive stone slab, waiting. Chisom wasn't there yet, but Amaka knew. Midnight was coming, and they weren't leaving until they tore this place down. The room pulsed with heat and shadows. At the center stood Dave, cloaked in flowing red robes that shimmered in the candlelight, his face hidden behind a carved wooden mask etched with ancient symbols. Around him, 6 cultists chanted in a low guttural rhythm, their arms raised toward the ceiling where smoke coiled like fingers. Laid across a stone slab was Chisom, barely conscious, her wrists and ankles bound with rope, stained dark with dried blood. Her tiny chest rose and fell in shallow breaths, her eyes flickering open, just for a moment, before slipping shut again. Dave lifted a gleaming ritual blade, its tip carved like a fang. He stepped forward, muttering incantations to the god of consumption. The cultist chanting grew louder, faster, then crash. The heavy door burst open. A scream cut through the air. "Get away from my child!" Amaka charged into the chamber, face smeared with ash, and a lit Molotov cocktail in one hand and a dagger gripped tightly in her hand. The fire in her eyes burned brighter than the flames behind her. Panic erupted. 2 cultists lunged, but she swung the burning bottle at them, sending them dive aside. She threw it at the altar. It exploded in a ball of fire that licked the edges of Dave's robe. Dave snarled and lunged for Chisom, blade raised, but Amaka was faster. She tackled him with a scream that tore from the depths of her soul, plunging the knife into his shoulder, then again into his eye. Dave shrieked, blood spatting across his mask. He fell back, writhing, one hand clutching his face.
Tunde, standing just inside the door, caught it all on camera. His phone streamed live to thousands, then tens of thousands, who watched in stunned horror as the unholy ceremony unraveled in real time. Amaka cut Chisom's ropes with shaking hand. The little girl whimpered, clutching her mother weakly. As flames roared higher, Amaka scooped her daughter into her arms. The altar cracked behind them. Cultists scattered like rats. Outside, sirens bled through the night, drawn by the flood of tagged live streams, messages, and desperate viewers calling authorities across Lagos. The world had seen, and Amaka was no longer alone. Flames devoured the warehouse like a beast long starved. By the time the fire brigade broke through the collapsing walls, the roof had caved in and smoke choked the night sky. What they found inside sent a chill across the nation. Beneath the ashes, bones, small ones, charred textbooks, broken teeth, children's clothing melted into stone. A maze of tunnels ran under the building, lined with more horror, cages, rusted chains, and graves carved into concrete. Dave was pulled from the wreckage half-conscious, his face scorched and one eye gone completely. Even burned and blind, he laughed, whispered something about the hunger still living. But he was cuffed, sedated, and taken into custody. The court's shrine was gone, but whispers of others, other chapters, other Daves began to surface. Chisom survived, but she was no longer the same child who skipped home from school. She barely spoke, only clung to Amaka in silence, her eyes darting at shadows. She flinched at the smell of smoke. Amaka never let go of her hand, not even during sleep. She vowed, never again. Tunde's footage hit the internet like a tidal wave. The hot dog horror of Lagos headlined across blogs, news stations, and dark web forums. Protesters marched. Schools ran emergency safety drills. The government responded swiftly, too swiftly some said, with raids, new food safety licenses, and sudden silence on certain officials' involvement. Dave's disfigured face was plastered across TV screens and street murals. His cart was gone, but his shadow still stretched long over the city. The city was different, new skyline, new faces, but the craving felt the same. On a busy street corner in Port Harcourt, months after the horrors of Lagos had faded from the headlines, a sleek food truck pulled up just after sundown. It gleamed under rows of purple neon lights, its chrome side spotless, its logo sharp and modern. A banner flat above the windshield. Taste the raw flavor, no questions asked. The vendor stepped out slowly, wearing black gloves, a black apron, and a white paper cap that shadowed most of his face. He didn't speak, didn't smile. He simply opened the sliding window and began serving. The scent hit the air like a chemical spell. Rich, meaty, smoky. People flocked to it. Curious teenagers, late shift workers, and couples on evening strolls. Some giggled nervously. Heard this is like the Lagos hot dog guy, but cleaner, one said. No one asked what was in the meat. They just lined up. Inside the truck's refrigerated storage, behind the red-lit kitchen panel, bodies were stacked. Some fresh, limp and red. Others frozen solid, wrapped in plastic and labeled only by number. In the back, a headless torso dripped onto a floor drain. A hand still clutched a torn school ID card. The vendor moved mechanically, slicing, grilling, pressing buns and wrapping paper. One boy, barely 10, stood with his brother, wide-eyed and excited. It smells like jollof, he laughed. He took his first bite, tearing into the hot sausage with a grin. Then, he stopped chewing. His brow furrowed. He looked down at the sausage. Something inside twitched. His fingers trembled. A slick grey sliver wiggled out from the meat, like it was alive. The boy's smile vanished. His mouth hung open. The crowd behind him kept laughing, oblivious. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to Summer Folktales and turn on the notification bell for more stories.